Sira was not supposed to be in that elevator. Not at midnight. Not barefoot in one shoe, not with her head tilted against the mirrored wall, asleep so deeply that even the golden doors opening could not wake her. The elevator belonged to Taewon. In that tower, people lowered their voices when they said his name. Staff stepped aside before he entered a hallway. Men in black suits stood straighter when his shadow crossed the marble floor. And when those doors opened on the 73rd floor, everyone waiting outside froze. A black maid had fallen asleep inside the Korean Mafia boss's private elevator. Seori was the first to speak. "Remove her." 2 guards moved forward. Then Taewon lifted one hand. That was all. The guards stopped like the air itself had ordered them to. Taewon looked at Sira, at the dust on her apron, at the exhaustion beneath her eyes, at the folded paper crushed in her palm. Then, in front of everyone, he took off his black coat and placed it over her shoulders. No one breathed. He bent down, picked up the shoe she had lost, and set it beside her feet like it was something precious. Then he said, very quietly, "No one touches her." That was the moment the tower changed. And if stories about quiet women stepping into powerful rooms pull you in, stay close and subscribe, because what Taewon did next was only the first shock. Sira stirred when the warmth of his coat touched her. Her eyes opened slowly, unfocused at first, then filled with horror as she realized where she was. She tried to stand too quickly. "I am sorry," she whispered. "I was cleaning the lower floors. I must have pressed the wrong button." Seori's smile looked perfect, but her eyes were cold. "Wrong button? This elevator does not answer to staff cards." Sira's hand tightened around the folded paper. Taewon noticed. He stepped closer, not enough to trap her, just enough to block everyone else from seeing her fear. "What is in your hand?" Sira pulled the paper to her chest. "Nothing." Taewon's eyes dropped to the corner of it. One name was visible in faded blue ink. Liora. The color drained from his face so quickly that even Seori saw it. For the first time that night, the feared boss looked less like a king and more like a man who had just heard a ghost whisper his name. Sira saw the change. "You know her," she said. Taewon did not answer. Behind him, Seori's smile disappeared. And that was when Sira understood something worse than being caught. She had not entered the wrong elevator. She had entered the center of the secret. 3 weeks before that elevator opened, Sira had stood across the street from the tower with a paper bag of cheap bread in one hand and Liora's last message in the other. "Do not come looking unless I stop calling." That was what her sister had written. Then Liora stopped calling. The police report was thin. The staff records were cleaner than truth ever was. A young maid had resigned, they said. She had taken money, they said. She had left Seoul by choice, they said. But Sira knew her sister. Liora was afraid of storms, kept receipts in color order, and called Sira every Sunday night even if all she had to say was that the moon looked lonely. Liora would never vanish without leaving a real goodbye. So Sira became what the tower would not notice, a maid. She cleaned private dining rooms where men stopped talking when she entered. She polished glass walls that reflected secrets more clearly than faces. She learned which floors required which cards, which doors clicked twice before unlocking, which staff members avoided the west storage room, and which name made people suddenly remember they had somewhere else to be. That name was Taewon. But the name Sira hunted for was Liora. Aaron, the only co-worker who ever shared her tea, warned her on the 4th night. "Do not ask questions here," Aaron whispered. "Questions become accidents." Sira looked at her calmly. "Then I will become a very careful accident." Aaron almost smiled, but fear swallowed it. Around the 4-minute mark of any story like this, I always wonder where people are listening from, because every city has a tower like this in some form. Drop your city in the comments and tell me if you have ever walked into a place where the walls felt richer than the people were kind. Sira had grown used to being underestimated. In expensive rooms, people saw her uniform before they saw her face. They handed her empty glasses, dirty plates, and secrets they did not think she was important enough to understand. That was their first mistake. Her second week, she found Liora's gold hair clip wedged beneath a velvet bench outside the private elevator. Her third week, she found a torn staff pass hidden inside an air vent. On the night everything changed, Sira had worked 16 hours. Her feet ached, her stomach burned with hunger. Her eyes blurred as she followed the final clue from Liora's old locker. A sketch of a golden elevator button marked 73. She only meant to step inside for 1 minute, just 1 minute to see where the private elevator would take her. But grief has a weight. So does exhaustion. And before the elevator reached the top, Sira fell asleep with Liora's note in her hand. When Sira woke on the 73rd floor, she expected anger. She expected dismissal, maybe worse. She expected the beautiful woman in ivory, Seori, to win with that cold smile. She expected Taewon to look at her uniform, decide her worth, and throw her back into the invisible world she had climbed from. Instead, he told everyone to leave. Seori did not move. She breached a private floor. Taewon looked at her once. She fell asleep. She lied her way into your elevator. She is exhausted. She is dangerous. At that, Sira almost laughed. The sound came out broken. I clean fingerprints from glass doors for people who will not even look at me. If I am dangerous, this tower is more fragile than it looks.
For a heartbeat, Taewon's face changed. Not a smile, not even softness. Recognition. He sent the guards away. Seori left last, her heels clicking like a warning. Inside the private lounge, Taewon placed a cup of warm tea on the table in front of Sira. She did not touch it. I will not be bought with kindness, she said. I did not offer kindness. What do you call this? A pause. Sira looked at the coat still around her shoulders, then back at him. You knew Liora. Taewon's jaw tightened. A woman named Liora worked here. She was accused of stealing from my private archives. My sister does not steal. I did not say I believed it. Then why is she missing? Silence spread between them. Outside the window, Seoul glittered like a field of cold stars. Inside, the room smelled of tea, rain, and expensive wood. Taewon stood with his hands behind his back, as if even his regret had been trained to obey him. I looked for her, he said finally. Sira's breath caught. Do not say that unless it is true. It is true. Then you failed. The words landed hard. Miru, who had entered quietly near the doorway, looked at Sira like she had just stepped in front of a moving car. But Taewon did not punish her. He lowered his eyes. Yes, he said, I did. That answer unsettled Sira more than anger would have. Taewon told her to leave the tower before sunrise. He said there were people inside it who would hurt her to protect old lies. He said Liora's name had already cost too much. Sira stood, still wrapped in his coat. You think fear is a door I will politely close behind me? No, Taewon said. I think courage can still get you buried. Sira stepped closer, close enough to see the tiredness beneath his power. And I think men like you call it protection when you cannot bear to be questioned. His eyes held hers. In that silence, something dangerous moved. Not desire alone. Trust, trying not to be born. By morning, the tower had a new rumor. The boss had carried a maid's shoe. Some said Sira had bewitched him. Some said Taewon had gone soft. Some said Seori had not smiled once since midnight. Only one person knew the rumor was smaller than the truth. Seori stood alone in the archive room beneath the tower, wearing ivory gloves and reading Sira's employee file.
She had known from the first day. Sira, age 24. No family listed except one emergency contact scratched out and rewritten twice. Previous work in small hotels. No criminal record. Too careful with questions. Too interested in old staff rosters. And connected to Liora. Seori closed the file gently. To her, cruelty was not cruelty. It was maintenance. A tower like this, she believed, survived because someone cleaned up weakness before it spread. Taewon had inherited power, but Seori had kept it breathing. She had lied, threatened, negotiated, and buried scandals so the family name could remain untouchable. Then Liora found the ledger. That was the real beginning. Not Sira in the elevator. Not Taewon's coat. A young maid with bright eyes had opened the wrong cabinet and found records that proved Seori had been redirecting money, framing rivals, and silencing anyone who noticed. Liora had hidden proof somewhere before Seori could take it back. Now her sister had come. At noon, Taewon summoned Sira again. This time Dane stood by the door, stiff and watchful. Miru sat near the window, looking older than he had the night before. Taewon placed Liora's torn staff pass on the table. "Where did you find this?" Sira did not answer. "You are not safe here," he said. "Then help me." "I am trying to." "No, you are trying to send me away with half-truths and a warm drink." Miru sighed. "Young woman, you are standing in a storm and criticizing the umbrella." Sira looked at him. "An umbrella is useless if it belongs to the storm." Taewon's gaze sharpened, but there was something like admiration beneath it. "Here is the question I would ask you right now. If you were Sira, would you trust Taewon after he protected you, or would you still see him as part of the danger? Put your answer in the comments, because this is where the story becomes complicated." Taewon told Sira that Liora had disappeared after being accused of stealing a family ledger. Sira heard the word accused and understood the trap. Who accused her? No one spoke. Then Seori entered without knocking. "I did." She looked flawless, calm, almost sorrowful. "Your sister was sweet," Seori said. "That made her easy to use. Someone placed stolen documents in her bag. We tried to handle it quietly." Sira stood so fast the chair scraped behind her. "You are lying." Seori's eyes cooled. "Careful. Grief can make poor women confuse suspicion with evidence." Taewon stepped between them. That one movement changed the room. Seori saw it. Sira saw it. Miru saw it. Taewon had not chosen Sira yet, but for the first time he had chosen to stand in front of Seori. That night, Sira found a folded napkin inside her locker. "West Prayer Room, midnight. Come alone." She knew it could be a trap. She went anyway. The West Prayer Room was not really a prayer room anymore. It was a forgotten space behind the old banquet hall, where candles had burned years ago for people who wanted to look innocent in public. Now it held dust, broken chairs, and one stained glass window that turned moonlight into gold. Aaron was waiting inside, shaking. "I am sorry," she whispered before Sira could speak. Sira stopped. "For what?" Aaron pulled a small brass key from her sleeve. "Liora gave me this the night she vanished. She said if you ever came, I should give it to you. But Seori watches everyone. She knew I had it. She made me tell her your shifts." Sira felt the room tilt. "You told her where I was?" Aaron began to cry. "My mother's medical bills, my brother's job. She knew everything. I was afraid." Sira wanted to hate her. For a moment, she did. And honestly, this is the kind of betrayal that makes viewers angry, because it does not come from a stranger. It comes from someone who smiled beside you while fear pulled their strings. Before Sira could answer, Taewon appeared at the door. Aaron flinched. "I followed Dane," he said, "not you." From the shadows, Dane stepped forward, his face gray with shame. "I moved Liora's footage," he confessed. "Seori ordered it. I told myself I was only obeying. Sira's voice went cold. Where is my sister? Dane looked at Taewon, then at the floor. Alive. The word broke something open in Sira. She grabbed the back of a chair to steady herself. Taewon went still. You knew? Dane shook his head quickly. Not until last week. She has been kept outside the tower, moved between safe houses controlled by Seori's people. She was not harmed, but she was threatened. She had hidden proof. Seori needed the location. Sira pressed the brass key into her palm so hard it hurt. What does this open? Aaron pointed to the old altar. Behind it was a narrow cabinet, painted the same black as the wall. The key turned with a soft click. Inside lay a silk pouch. Inside the pouch was a small ledger, a memory card, and Liora's pendant. Sira touched the pendant and finally cried. Not loudly, just one breath that sounded like a door breaking. Taewon reached toward her, then stopped, asking without words. Sira let him take the pendant from her shaking hand. His face changed as he read the first page of the ledger. Seori had not protected the family. She had been feeding on it. Accounts, names, false accusations, payments to bury records. Liora's handwriting filled the margins with dates and questions. Taewon closed his eyes. My house did this to her. Sira looked at him through tears. Then what will you do? For the first time, Taewon had no polished answer, only the truth, whatever it costs. For 1 hour, Sira believed the nightmare might end gently. Taewon arranged a meeting in the rooftop conservatory, an old glass garden above the city where his mother had once grown white flowers in black ceramic bowls. He said Liora would be brought there before dawn. He said only Maru, Dain, and Kova would know. Kova arrived furious. He had warned Sira not to trust the tower, not to trust Taewon, not to trust men whose apologies came wrapped in silk. But when he saw the pendant in her hand, his anger softened into fear. She is alive? He asked. Sira nodded. Kova looked at Taewon. If this is a lie, I do not care how powerful you are. Taewon met his eyes. If it is a lie, I will deserve whatever you think of me. That answer made Kova quieter than any threat could have. In the conservatory, Sira waited under hanging vines and gold light. Rain moved across the glass ceiling like fingers searching for a way in. Taewon stood near the door, not touching her, but close enough that his presence felt like a wall between her and the world. You do not have to be brave every second, he said. Sira looked at the city below. I do not know who I am when I stop. You are still the woman who found a door everyone else pretended was a wall. She turned to him. Do you say things like that to all the maids who fall asleep in your elevator? His mouth softened. Only the ones who accuse me of failing before breakfast. For the first time, Sira smiled. It was small, tired, real. Then the lights went out. The conservatory fell into emergency red. Dane's voice came through Taewon's phone, broken by static. She knows. Sira's blood went cold. Across the glass, a message appeared on the tower's external screen, meant for Taewon's private system. Bring the ledger, or Liora disappears for good. Sira stepped back. No. Taewon reached for the ledger inside his coat. Sira caught his wrist. If we give it to her, she owns every silence forever. If we do not, your sister may pay. My sister risked everything so this would not stay hidden. Kova moved toward the door. There has to be another way. Maru's voice answered from behind them. There is, but it will burn the whole house down. Taewon looked at the tower beneath his feet, the empire built by men who taught him that control was survival. Then he looked at Sira, and for the first time, Sira saw the choice before him clearly. He could save his throne, or he could save what was left of his soul. Seori asked for the ledger at the East Ballroom before sunrise. Not a warehouse, not a dark alley. A ballroom. That was her style. She liked cruelty under chandeliers. She liked fear wearing perfume. The room had been prepared for a family council that would never happen. Long tables, black flowers, gold plates, a portrait of Taewon's mother watching from the far wall with sad, painted eyes. Sira entered in her maid uniform. Taewon entered beside her in black. Kova stayed near the back with Aaron, who looked as if guilt had aged her overnight. Maru stood near the side doors. Dane waited by the security panel, hands trembling. Seori stood at the head of the room in ivory. "You should have taken the coat and gone home," she told Sira. Sira held the ledger against her chest. "You should have left my sister alone." Seori's face barely moved. "Your sister was offered mercy. She mistook it for weakness." "No," Sira said. "She mistook herself for invisible. That was your mistake." Seori turned to Taewon. "This is what sentiment does. A maid sleeps in your elevator, and suddenly you are willing to destroy generations of work?" Taewon's voice was quiet. "Generations of fear. Fear is structure. Fear is rot." Seori laughed softly. "Do you think she loves you, Taewon? She needs you. There is a difference." Sira felt the words hit their mark because part of her had wondered the same thing. Was Taewon her ally because of justice, or because danger made tenderness feel bigger than it was? Taewon did not defend himself. He looked at Sira. "She should question me. She should question everything in this room." That was when Sira knew. Love was not him demanding trust. Love was him allowing truth. Before the climax begins, make your prediction in the comments. Do you think Taewon will hand over the ledger to save Liora quietly, or expose Seori and risk losing everything? Seori lifted her phone. On the screen was Liora, seated in a plain room, alive, frightened, but staring straight ahead with the same brave eyes Sira remembered. Sira almost ran forward. Kova caught her arm gently. Seori smiled. "The ledger." Sira looked at Liora's face, then at Taewon, then at Aaron, who was crying silently, then at Dane, whose hand hovered over the panel like he was waiting for permission to become a better man. Sira placed the ledger on the table. Seori's smile returned, but Sira did not step back. She opened the first page and began to read aloud. Names, dates, false charges, hidden accounts. Witnesses moved, staff blamed, families threatened. Her voice shook at first, then grew stronger. Seori's smile faded. Taewon turned toward Dane. "Now." The ballroom screens lit up, not with Seori's message, with Liora, live. She was no longer in the plain room. Maru had found the location through Dane's confession, and legitimate investigators had reached her minutes before the ballroom doors closed. Liora looked terrified, but free. "Sira," she whispered. Sira dropped the ledger. One sound left her, half sob, half prayer. Seori turned on Dane. "You fool!" Dane lowered his head. "Yes," he said. "For years." Then the ballroom doors opened, not with Seori's people, with investigators, legal officers, and staff members who had been gathered quietly by Maru and Kova, while Seori believed everyone was still afraid. Taewon stepped forward. Every eye turned to him. This was the second moment that shocked everyone. The first time, he covered a sleeping maid with his coat. This time, he removed the gold family ring from his finger and placed it on the table beside the ledger. "My family built too much in darkness," he said. "I will give every record I have. I will answer for what carries my name. But this ends now." Seori stared at him as if he had spoken another language. "You would ruin yourself for her?" Taewon looked at Sira. "No," he said. "Because of her, I finally understand what ruin is." Seori's composure cracked, not into wildness, into disbelief. She had built her life on the idea that fear always won if it was dressed well enough. But fear had miscalculated Sira. Erin stepped forward next. Her voice trembled, but she confessed what she had done and who had forced her. Dane gave the footage records. Maru handed over the old archive keys. And Sira, the maid Seori had mocked, stood in the center of the ballroom while the entire tower listened. When Liora arrived an hour later, wrapped in a gray blanket, Sira did not run at first. She was afraid the sight might vanish if she moved too fast. Then Liora opened her arms. Sira crossed the room and held her sister so tightly that all the words they had lost became one long cry. If this moment reminded you of someone who stood by you when the world felt too heavy, share this story with them. Because sometimes people need to remember that invisible does not mean powerless. Months passed. The tower changed slowly, honestly, painfully. Seori faced the consequences of her choices. Erin kept her job only after telling the truth and accepting Sira's anger. Dane testified. Maru helped dismantle the hidden rooms he had once protected. Taewon was no longer called boss. He did not pretend one confession erased the past. He cooperated. He gave up control. He learned to stand in rooms without needing everyone to fear him. Sira used settlement money and public attention to build a worker support fund in Liora's name. Not charity, protection. A door for people who had been told to stay silent. On the first winter night after everything ended, Sira returned to the rooftop conservatory. Taewon was there, holding the black coat he had placed over her shoulders the night they met. "You forgot this," he said. Sira smiled. "I think you gave it away." He stepped closer, careful as always. "Then keep it." She looked at him for a long moment. "I do not need saving anymore." "I know. But I might choose walking beside someone." His eyes softened. "I would be honored." Below them, Seoul glittered in gold and black. No longer a cage, no longer a throne, just a city full of windows where someone might finally be seen. And Sira, who had entered the tower as a maid searching for her sister, left it as the woman who made a dangerous man choose truth over power. Subscribe for more stories where the quietest heart in the room still changes the ending.